The majority of European countries found in 2008 that they were in a hazardous position as the first signals of the financial crisis surfaced, slowing down their economic progress. Greece's economic downturn posed a serious problem for servicing its debt. At the period, many Greeks took part in strikes as a means of expressing their discontent. Given the severe conditions, the Greek government was forced into the unfortunate position of selling off its own land. One such location is the port of Piraeus, which is on the brink of bankruptcy due to poor administration. Even nevertheless, nations are hesitant to take over the port since they know it will eventually be abandoned. China paid $48 million at the time, US dollars for the port, and got a 35-year franchise in return. There were repercussions felt all throughout the globe from this historic event. Many nations in Europe see China's acquisition of the Piraeus port at a price of $48 million as a very hasty move. If China knew that the port was in such disarray, why would it acquire it? How's today's port activity in Paris, if you don't mind my asking? One of the first things that comes to mind when we think of Europe is, undoubtedly, the continent's booming economy. The economies of the European Union member states are booming. Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and other similar industrialized nations have consistently had some of the highest IPs in the world. In contrast to the rapid growth observed in other countries, the idea that Europe would be home to many little states like Greece is a rather novel one. The economy is growing in Greece at a snail's pace. Moreover, whenever Greece has an economic crisis, the country is met with enormous challenges that might ultimately lead to its insolvency. One of the four great ancient civilizations of the globe, Greece has long been revered. Geographically, Greece has a good location. Its name comes from its position on the southeastern coast of the European peninsula. A membership invitation to the European Union was given to Greece after World War I because of the country's strategic position. As a consequence, Greece's political economy has changed rapidly since the 1960s, and the country's stature in the international community has risen dramatically. Due to the success of the tourist industry, Greece's own GDP has expanded at a fast pace, making the extension of that sector the country's top economic priority. However, the Greek economy was seriously harmed and eventually destroyed around the turn of the 20th century owing to the prevalence of economic crises across the globe, including the Greek sovereign debt crisis. The interaction of these two elements at this moment caused this. The European Union member nations have chosen to turn a blind eye to Greece's dire economic predicament, rather than provide assistance or compassion in search of a remedy. State-owned assets in Greece were sold off at steep discounts. One of them, called Piraeus Port, is Greece's main port of entry for foreign commerce and business. Neither an American nor a European government would have accepted Greece's offer to give up sovereignty of this port under the circumstances. China ultimately paid $4.8 billion USD for the IPE and was granted a license to use PU Nun, numbers 2 and 3, over the course of 35 years at the Piraeus port. Unfortunately, when news of the purchase spread, European countries were unable to comprehend the Chinese method. Several European nations also viewed China's purchase of the Greek port of Piraeus with disapproval. The study revealed that losses for the port of Piraeus may reach up to 13 million euros by that time. A number of the facilities inside the port are now inoperable due to the period of time that has gone since they were last serving. Greece's economic crisis meant that dock employees were unable to get compensated for their time. Employees were understandably upset by this turn of events. Now that China has taken over the port, all operations at the Piraeus port must be overseen by the Chinese government. For this reason, some European nations see China's $48 million acquisition of the private Piraeus port as very unwise. The issue then arises as to why China keeps using an almost bankrupt port at excessive fee. The Chinese government spent $48 million, about $31 million at the time, to acquire the Greek port of Piraeus. There were two main factors in deciding to make the acquisition. Europe's nations, the situation's originating and principal cause, stand to gain little from China's hasty implementation of its One Belt, One Road program, so that it may ship domestic commodities to the nations of Europe for export. The government needs a port that is generally safe, functional, and trustworthy. Furthermore, the port will need to be restored and maintained as part of the transit process for many different sorts of commodities. Despite its bad state, the Piraeus is flowing. The geographical position of Greece is unmatched. This port is the closest western port to the Suez Canal, adding to the area's already favorable positioning in Greece. This close proximity, along with the region's generally agreeable environmental and climatic qualities, makes it an excellent choice for warehousing purposes. China stands to gain economically more from the development of this port than any other nation. And secondly, China acquired the aircraft carrier Very from Ukraine, despite Greece's membership in Europe. As a result of harassment from Turkey and other countries during its transport, China decided to purchase this vessel. Greece supplied aid to China at about the same time. China is firmly committed to maintaining peace and gives it great priority, keeping up good rapport with its pals. In this sense, China is always prepared to provide a helping hand to the Greek people. They could need it eventually. Can it be hoped that China's ownership of a port, as dreadful as the one in Peru, would ultimately lead to its improvement? China has a solid basis on which to build its infrastructure, which is one of the country's many strengths. After assessing the existing state of the port, China decided to implement two plans to develop it. 2 weeks were spent by technicians from inside China who were sent to the region around the port to fix the port's infrastructure and get it back up and operating after it had been destroyed. The Chinese company started the process of renovating the deepwater port after gaining approval from the Greek area. They were able to do this with the help of 15-catch lifts that were incredibly sharp and ruthless. The port's vigor has been rekindled, and it can now handle many more cargo shipments than during its heyday, all thanks to the installation of electric tire cranes. Conversely, China has chosen to hire over 1,000 locals near the port in Greece because of its strategic location. Workers may also acquire top-notch training so that they can stay at home without leaving their nation. To help Greece strengthen its workforce, China sent highly skilled people from China to fill all available positions. They were able to get the job done with 1,000 new hires after just 2 months on the job and in the positions given to them. The port's overall output has also increased substantially. The Chinese government is placing a higher priority on the Piraeus port. The key to lowering China's international trade expenses is to take this most crucial step toward opening up the European market. Right now, this is the single most important measure. Around $12 billion used per year might be brought into China through the pure port. This is 3 times as much as China spent in that year on purchases. It's very clear that China's decision to buy the port of Piraeus was the most astute move it could have taken. Foreign observers saw China's improvements to the port and the port's real economic advantages and concluded that China had done the right step.